Broadcast style and writing basics. Good broadcast writing, remember, is about writing for the ear, not for the eye. Even if we're talking about TV or online video where we see images, we're still talking about the way we consume this content. So your audience is going to be hearing the information, and this is critical. So a conversational approach, not extremely informal, but more conversational than writing for the eye. For example, contractions are acceptable. We do have to be careful because can't and can sound an awful lot alike, but won't, don't, right? So there are examples of when contractions are acceptable. We use short and simple language. We write tight, but sentences are shorter, less complex than in writing for the eye, writing for online. So we're less likely to use the inverted pyramid with this style, although we do still use it. So it depends on what you're producing. But we use present tense when appropriate. We don't artificially insert present tense, but oftentimes we want to help the audience understand this is happening now. This is the most up-to-date status we have. So we use present tense, and because of that, we use say instead of said. Active voice, remember that active voice, which is also very useful when writing for online or in print, but it's essential in writing for broadcast because that's how we hear the information. We need to consume it in the correct order for our minds to make sense of it. So subject, verb, object. Let's take a look at a sentence with present tense and in that subject, verb, object construction. For online or print, we might say an Austin man shot his wife and then took his life, police said. That makes sense, and that is still quite concise subject, verb, object. But an Austin man shot his wife, then took his life, police said. So one of the challenges with this is who said it? We say at the end who said it, and we say said. In broadcast, police say an Austin man shot his wife this morning before turning the gun on himself. Now, notice that the attribution is at the beginning of the sentence because it helps to place the information as we hear it. We need to know where this information came from so we know how much credibility to give it. So when we're listening, we want to know first, was it the police who said this? Was it the mayor? Or was it somebody down the street who say, I think this happened? Here's a couple more examples. So for broadcast, we might say, one of the trendiest spots in San Antonio will be the location of a pop-up fundraiser this Monday night. It's happening at the Botica restaurant in the Pearl. For online or print, it's okay to approach this in a little more storytelling fashion. Foodies with a taste for Mediterranean-style cuisine with the Puerto Rican roots can help the hurricane-ravaged U.S. territory at a pop-up fundraiser Monday evening. Now, there might be times actually when we would use something similar in broadcast, but you can see how this is more straightforward. Let's take a look at a little bit of a contrast between something that was written for the eye, written for online, and then broadcast. This is a lead that we might read online. As Newsday awaited word for its 2 journalists missing from Baghdad, the newspaper sought help from foreign governments, humanitarian agencies, and others in securing information about Matthew McAllister and Moiser Salman, last seen early Tuesday morning in their hotel room. That's a lot just to get through in one breath. So we wouldn't use this in broadcast. We're more likely to use this. 2 Newsday journalists are still missing in Baghdad. Very straightforward. It's happening now. They are still missing. Then the next sentence or paragraph. Newsday editor Anthony Morrow is asking foreign governments and humanitarian agencies for help in locating the 2. This short version, 50 words, is just a little bit longer than that really long lead of 40 words. And we don't necessarily use the names because we can't always fit details like names in a broadcast story if they aren't quite as important. If it was Anderson Cooper, we'd say he was missing. But if it's somebody we don't quite know, we might just run their photos on the screen with their names. So for purposes of our writing, we are going to say that a 15-second story equals about 35 words. So a 30-second story equals about 65 to 70 words. So you have to count your words in broadcast writing, especially when you're starting out, because we measure stories in length. So about 70 words, about 30 seconds. So, do the math. That's what we have to do in this. Multiply 70 by 2 to get a 1-minute story. This is a sample script, and there's a copy of this posted online in our lesson, but it gives you an idea of what that script looks like. Remember, we said it's going to be capital letters, all caps, because it's easier to read. And in this case, the sound bite, right, which is what we have been calling quotes for the writing we have been doing, the sound bite can be in lowercase. But it helps to find the sample and follow as you are writing. AP does have broadcast guidelines, which can be very helpful because AP often has to train people to write this way or the other way, right, to write for broadcast or to write for online. So this, if you go to the AP Style book online or in your book, you can find these guidelines, and it sort of explains, this is the lead, this is how you do backup, this is how you do details. And there's even a step-by-step how to go through it. So read through this. This is sort of a quick version of what your textbook has. Also read the textbook, of course. AP has punctuation guides, which you can listen to how words are pronounced, which is very important because in broadcast, obviously, we need to be able to say these complex words. So for example, do you know how to say Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini? You can listen to it. Now, we might know how to say Beyonce, but not everybody in the world does. Well, that's probably not a good example, but how do you say it? There's the pronunciation written here, and also you'll be able to listen to it if you go to the AP Style book online. And this is how we would also spell it in the script. We would spell it like this, well, like this, although I really think we probably all know how to say Beyonce. But we would spell it that way instead of the proper spelling that we need to use online, because for our script, we need to pronounce it correctly. Abbreviations, in general, we don't abbreviate things, although we can use contractions, remember, but we don't abbreviate, we spell it out. So La Palma Street, when we've got acronyms, we use, if we need to say each letter, if that's the way it's intended to be pronounced, then we would say C-B-S. And so we would, when you're reading it, you would say CBS. I doubt you would try to say the word CBS, but this helps whoever's reading it. FBI. If the acronym is actually pronounced as a word, as in NASA and NATO, then you don't put the hyphens in between, because if you did, somebody would pronounce it N-A-S-A, and that's not what we want. So it stands to reason mile per hour needs to either have the hyphens, but that wouldn't work because we don't want to pronounce it MPH, but we also wouldn't use an abbreviation. So miles per hour is spelled out. We don't use symbols because we aren't quite sure what to do with those. So in this case, we always use the word and, percent, we even say hashtag or pound if it's the pound sign we're talking about. We say at, we say dollars. All of these are really critical to being able to read the script correctly on air. Numbers in general, 0 is written as 0, 1 through 11 spell out. You can look at all of these on a style sheet that we have posted online. But one of the really important things to remember about numbers when we're talking about writing for the ear is a number like 1,345,345 is just too complex to say on air. It's really too complex to say most of the times. And we wouldn't necessarily even use this whole number in writing for online. But when we're writing for broadcast, we would say 1.3 million or $1.3 million if it was a monetary amount, right? So the dollars goes after because that's the way we say it. We have this broadcast style sheet. While there is a much larger broadcast style book, because we're just spending this amount of time with it, we won't be getting that broadcast style book, but if you are an electronic media major, you will get to know a lot of this. For our purposes, we have a broadcast style sheet posted online where you can review all of the necessary elements that you might use in your story. And one last thing, very important, just as with our writing for online and where we've said if you read it aloud, that can help you catch errors that you might have, it is essential to read your broadcast story aloud because you are going to be speaking the words, obviously, it's for broadcast. So to tell if your story is making sense and if it can flow, it's really important for you to read it, not just aloud in your head, as it were, but to actually speak the words out loud to see how it sounds.